through 23. I will be reading from the Common English Bible translation of God's holy word, and I invite you all to listen for the word of God. Now, Naomi had a respected relative, a man of work, through her husband from the family of Elimelech. His name was Boaz. Ruth the Moabite said to Naomi, "Let me go to the field so that I may glean among the ears of grain left behind someone in whose eyes I might find favor." And Naomi replied to her, "Go, my daughter." And so she went, and she arrived, and she gleaned in the field behind the harvesters. And by chance it happened to be the portion of the field that belonged to Boaz, who was from the family of Elimelech. Just then Boaz arrived from Bethlehem, and he said to the harvesters, "May the Lord be with you." And they said to him, "May the Lord bless you." Boaz said to his young man, the one who was overseeing the harvesters, "To whom does this young woman belong?" The young man who was overseeing the harvesters answered, "She's a young Moabite woman, the one who returned with Naomi from the territory of Moab." She said, "Please let me glean so that I might gather up grain from among the bundles behind the harvesters." And she arrived and has been on her feet from the morning until now, and has sat down only for a moment. Boaz said to Ruth, "Haven't you understood, my daughter? Don't go glean in another field. Don't go anywhere else. Instead, stay here with my young women. Keep your eye on the field that they are harvesting and go along after them. I have ordered the young men not to assault you. Whenever you are thirsty, go to the jugs and drink from what the young men have filled." And then she bowed down, face to the ground, and replied to him, "How is it that I found favor in your eyes, that you notice me? I'm an immigrant." Boaz responded to her, "Everything that you did for your mother-in-law after your husband's death has been reported fully to me. How you left behind your father, your mother, and the land of your birth, and came to a people you hadn't known beforehand. May the Lord reward you for your deed. May you receive a rich reward from the Lord, the God of Israel, under whose wings you've come to seek refuge." And she said, "May I continue to find favor in your eyes, sir, because you've comforted me, and because you've spoken kindly to your female servant, even though I'm not one of your female servants." And at mealtime, Boaz said to her, "Come over here, eat some of the bread, and dip your piece in the vinegar." She sat alongside the harvesters, and he served roasted grain to her, and she ate and was satisfied and had leftovers. And then she got up to glean, and Boaz ordered his young men, "Let her glean between the bundles, and don't humiliate her. Also, pull out some of the bales for her, and leave them behind for her to glean. And don't scold her." And so she gleaned in the field until evening, and then she threshed what she had gleaned, and it was about an ephah of barley. And she picked it up and went into town, and her mother-in-law saw what she had gleaned, and she brought out what she had left over after eating her fill and gave it to her. And her mother-in-law said to her, "Where did you glean today? Where did you work? May the one who noticed you be blessed." And she told her mother-in-law with whom she had worked, and said, "The name of the man with whom I work today is Boaz." And Naomi replied to her daughter-in-law, "May he be blessed by the Lord, who hasn't abandoned his faithfulness with the living or with the dead." And Naomi said to her, "The man is one of our close relatives. He's one of our redeemers." And Ruth the Moabite replied, "Furthermore, he said to me, 'Stay with my workers until they finish all of my harvest.'" And Naomi said to Ruth, her daughter-in-law, "It's good, my daughter, that you go out with his young women, so that the men don't assault him in another field." And thus she stayed with Boaz's young women, gleaning until the completion of the barley and wheat harvests. And she lived with her mother-in-law. This is the word of God for the people of God.
Thanks be to God.
Let's pray. Oh, holy God, may the words of my mouth and the meditations of all of our hearts be holy and acceptable to you. For you are our rock and our Redeemer. Amen. There is a man from a town called, and I'm going to get this wrong, Natchitoches. It's the one in Louisiana. They don't say it right. I don't know. It's not Natchitoches. We know where that is. It's the one across the state line over in Louisiana. Did I get close? Close enough. Y'all know what I'm talking about. There's a young man there. He happens to be in his 90s. His name is Lloyd Ponder, and I think we have a picture of Mr. Ponder. He's the one on the left, right in the glory spot on the camera. Mr. Ponder has a unique experience. He survived a Japanese prisoner of war camp during World War II. Most of the men that went in didn't come out. They didn't come out like this man did. Okay? He came out without a scratch. Well, that's not entirely true. He did have a scratch on him. He had one wound that he claimed was self-inflicted. He cut his finger when he was opening a can of rations. He said other than that, when people were dying all around him, he came out relatively unscathed. And so when that happens, of course, the Air Force wants to ask Sergeant Ponder, what happened? How did this occur? What did you do? And I got some quotes. See, these are his answers. I'm going to use his words. He said, I remember thinking to myself, if anyone is going to get out of this alive, it's going to be me. Determination is the attitude you had to have. Knowing you can survive whatever. And this man had whatever thrown at him. He absolutely did. Where they had hard labor and injury and illness and brutality all around him, he came out to live to be an old man. Sergeant Ponder went on to say that what helped him survive when others were unable to. What advice had he received? And he replied, to always have hope. To always have hope no matter what. Hope makes a difference. If you don't have hope, you're gone. Having hope can get you through anything. What got him through this experience? The simple thing is hope. When asked what one thing did, hope. Hope can get you through anything. Likewise, a lack of hope is fatal. It's been about 8 minutes without air and about a second without any hope. And Pearl Buck said, I love this. Pearl Buck said, to eat bread without hope is to still slowly starve to death. You see, we weren't created to live without the hope of something in our future. Now, we look, a lot of times when we look at the good old days, right? And it's good to celebrate God's goodness in the past. But if we dwell in the past and have no hope for the future, well, according to this book, we're going to slowly starve to death. We can look at the good old days. We can look at where we are today and see only what is. We can have hope and look at today and see what might be. And as we join our friend Naomi and her daughter-in-law Ruth today. If you remember from last week, Naomi lost everything. She lost her home. She was able to move with her husband to another country. She left everything behind. And when they moved over there, her husband died. And then her sons were able to provide for her until they died. And then she's left with their wives left behind. So now she's got 2 additional mouths to feed and has no idea what to do. So Naomi sends one of her daughters-in-law back, and the other, Ruth just doesn't listen. She says, no, I'm going to go with you. I'm going to go where you go. I'm going to live where you live. Your people will be my people. Your God will be my God. Yes! God is awesome! One word again. Oh. You see, when Naomi and Ruth arrived in Bethlehem, they had some choices they had to make. They could look out there at Bethlehem and Naomi could say, I remember how good it was before that famine. Oh, we had everything so good. It was great. And now, woe is me. I'm here. This is hopeless. And Ruth, don't even bother going out to the fields. Just, what if you go out there and you don't find anything, or what if you don't find enough? Oh, this is really bad. You see, a lot of times we like to play these what-if games, the hypothetical situations that 99% of the time they don't come true. But we love to play what-if games, and we are creative, and we're very good at it. And we can imagine some horrible situations. So Naomi could have just sat there and said, what if I don't even get enough money for begging? Oh, this is horrible. That's one of the choices she had. She could look out there and see the situation and say, well, we're not dead yet, but we will be soon. This is all there is. Or, this is the thing. Naomi could get out of a what-if situation and move into fact, dealing with hard, cold fact. That God is still a good God. That God's law for Israel at that time provided for her to be cared for. God had this all planned ahead of time. That when you have people that can't care for themselves, that God has a plan. The fact is that she had some amazing relatives that were going to care for her. See, these aren't the what-if situations. This is the hard, cold fact of reality. And she looked at this and said, there's a possibility for the future. Why? Because she threw away all the what-if stuff and started dealing with the reality of hope. Now, some people say that in a situation like this, well, when everything is just beyond your control, what you need to do is give it to God. Now, there's two ways you can do that, okay? I have a good friend that used to be a flight instructor for the Air Force. And one of the assignments he got was training fighter pilots for Saudi Arabia. And you do some things when in-flight training that are, I don't think my lunch would survive. And they were going through some patterns, and all of a sudden they lost control of the airplane. And the Saudi pilot throws up his hand and said, "It is the will of Allah that we die today." And my friend grabbed the other set of control and said, "We're not today, buddy." And he pulls the plane back and regained control of the plane, landed it safely. That's one way to give it to God. The other way is kind of the way that I think my friend did, which is, I'm going to do what I can, knowing that if I crash, God's going to still love me. God's going to be there with me, but I'm going to do what I can to pull us out of this rather than just throw it all away. Now, you can sit back, and Naomi could have just sat back and said, well, I'm just going to give the situation to God, and if God chooses to provide for me, dandy. But she did more than that. See, God had given her a wonderful daughter-in-law in Ruth. He said, Ruth, why don't we go ahead and do what we can, knowing that God will bless our efforts. And so Naomi went out to go after the harvesters to find the part that they had left behind. And she encountered an amazing man. Where if they had just sat back and said, no, we gave it to God. We gave it to God. I'm not going to do anything because we gave it to God. Somehow I don't see that's what Naomi did. Naomi said, we're going to trust God. We're going to trust God's goodness. We're going to trust that God will bless, not our doing nothing, but bless our efforts. And in doing that, we are introduced to one of the great love stories anywhere, in my view. That of Ruth and Boaz. It gets pretty steamy next week. I want to tune in on that. This is good stuff. And we started out with just despair and loss and loyalty. And this week we're moving into the reality of looking at the facts. That God loves us. That God loved us yesterday and God got some empty pews here, we're not full. That's pretty lousy. Or do we celebrate the heritage that we have and say, you know, God has been with our church all these amazing years. It's been super great. We've got some room for some growth. And you know, back in the 50s, they didn't have Rick Rogers sing a song like that for them. Was that pretty awesome? You know, we didn't have all of these amazing things. And now we look and we're poised going into the future. And if all we see is what is, and all we do is start playing our little hypothetical what-if games, we might as well just sit back and say, well, we gave it to God. I hope He blesses our not doing anything. Yeah, that doesn't usually end well. But if we have the reality of hope, not only is it easier on the justice system, it's dealing with fact, not in what others. Would you pray with me? Amazing God of love, we praise you and we thank you that you are the great constant in our life. When we look at reality, the reality is that you love us. The reality is that you put amazing people in our lives. The reality is that you want a bright future for us. The reality is that loss and death don't have the final word, that you reserve that for your love. God, help us to stop playing hypothetical what-ifs and depressing ourselves. Help us to live into the reality